Test, 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 test. Yeah, hello there, YouTubers, beloved patrons, subscribers, and frequent viewers. Welcome to another live stream and welcome back to my channel. It's the 24th of March, year 2026, both at Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time / Sydney time and local Peking time. So yeah, I do kind of consider the fact that One Piece and breathing such a miracle, since during the past several weeks I have been pretty much starving, and for about nearly 10 consecutive days I haven't had a proper meal. But yes, I did receive some help from you guys and from one of my uncles and my aunts / my adopted parents, and one of my adopted siblings / brothers. I did receive some snacks, some instant ramen, and I did have I asked my adopted old man / one of my uncles to buy me a meal using my Hong Kong, my last remaining Hong Kong currency, about 220 Hong Kong dollars. Yes, and I asked him to help me pay for the the phone, the landline, landline phone landline phone bill, which is linked to the internet, and of course nowadays pretty much a necessity. So that should last. That should keep this this that should keep this tiny tiny sanctuary of mine functioning for another month at least. But I can't really say the same for the future couple of months, since the circumstance has turned a lot more volatile and treacherous, a lot more volatile and treacherous than year 2025, year 2024, year 2023 combined. Since I lost my Aussie prepaid phone number, since during the past several weeks I was quite financially devastated, due to several of my clients not paying me, and my own poor financial literacy, and and that wicked woman's relentless persecutions, blah blah blah. Loads of rogue elements, loads of setbacks. I haven't been able to recover from how should I put it, from those setbacks, and even now, I am suffering from symptoms of hyperthyroid, hyperthyroidism. I'm not, trying to I'm not trying to diagnose, but I did, I came to such a conclusion based on several facts. First of all, my blood test result several years ago, yeah, late year 2023, if my memory still serves. What else? And yes, so I did, apparently, the level, my T3, T4 level appeared, quite high, moderately high, I'd say. And I did look up, NHS web page. Most of my symptoms, quite, match, their definition and a description of hyperthyroidism, quite perfectly, say trembling and tachycardia, palpitations, and also poor quality of sleep. I'd say, and sometimes I kind of tend to wake up in the middle of night, say at around 1 a.m., 2 a.m., even 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3. Still, occasionally I do some fairly quality sleep, and sometimes I just kind of do my do stretch my extreme length, to exercise, to work out. Before I filmed this, before I initiated this live stream, I did around 50 sit-ups. Uh, uh, Despite the various of bodily discomfort and my weakened state. So I don't know if I am doing enough to improve my shitty and precarious situation, but that's pretty much all I know I can do to save myself, to help. Since of a rather famous saying goes, God helps those who help themselves. And I suppose such saying fits and applies to my current circumstance flawlessly. So yeah. So yeah, the first, yes. So enough with the pleasantries. Enough with the pleasantries. So during this live filming session, I just want you guys to know that I am still alive, still in one piece. Though I won't, very much thank God, but instead thank my thank my adopted parents and my adopted siblings, and more importantly, you guys, who generously chip, you know, chipping in, to the, to my cause, though there are some, at least, one troll, one hater, I beg your pardon, who said that I am a lost cause. But, you know, I do take that as an highly hostile, highly malicious insult. I don't really mind, that you guys call me a loser, since my current circumstance, my based on my current circumstance, based on results I delivered, in response to my circumstance, I have I do have suffered numerous multitudes after multitudes of defeats and you know losses. So yes, so that should sound rather self-explanatory to you guys. I do, at least, fit the, you know um if you, put the, the if you outline a definition, if you try to outline or try to give a brief outline of the definition of user and put it, or write it down in bullet points, then I guess I do fit, most of the, bullet points pertaining, to a loser. So I don't really mind that you guys call me a loser or blah blah blah, but I still, kind of, yes. How should I put it? Yes, I do, um I do have to admit that yes, being called a lost cause does, does hit my nerve and hurt my feelings. But still, since it comes from a troll, it comes from a hater me of my channel. So I can't really, say, though yes, I can block him or hide, from my channel, but I just say, I try to, to give to give each and every man, a fairly, say fairly relaxed, fairly relaxing and friendly, space to voice their opinions, to even, throw and, to, to pick on each other and blah blah blah. Since I understand that, the current, world, harbors so much toxicity and so much hostility, uh, against, men, against masculine and awoke men, and or authentic men who keep it real, and, and dare to preach facts and truths non-stop. like what I'm doing. You know, since I don't really have I consider myself a rather a rather a rather boring dude, rather boring, and a person, you know some of you, might ask me, why I don't really film my daily routine as part of my my endeavor, to advocate for for self improvements, for well-being of masculine men. Well, I think, well, the brief is, I don't really have much to show for, in terms of showcasing my daily routine, say what I eat for food, what I do for for hobbies, for copes with this harsh and hostile and ruthless reality. You know, and I am not that good at making cuts, making fancy schmancy or fancy schwancy, you know, um, you know, transitions and special effects when it comes to content creation, when it comes to video creation and blah blah blah. I just let's say my editing skill, even far from weak, even far from weak, who oftentimes claims that until this until the present day, he still can't edit his own videos. Even his editing skills far outperforms mine. And more often than not, I just don't really bother to spend so much time editing the cuts and jump cuts of my videos, just to try to appeal, or try to simp for for YouTube's algorithm, so that I can somehow gain some favors and rise in fame, or 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 popularity on YouTube and on other social media. At this point, I have pretty much given up on making a bank on YouTube. I just instead shift. I've shifted the primary focus, onto the most uh, b- basic, onto the most fundamental, which is to just voice my opinions, keep myself company, you know and doing my best to retain my sanity by vocalizing my own thoughts and ideas, also as an attempt to cure, to at least mitigate, if not completely cure or heal, my stuttering. And so far, I don't really seem to stutter that much during this live filming session. So at least thank God for that. Amen. But yeah, the past several weeks of starvation, taught me so much. You know, I though I'm not saying that I though I am not saying that I particularly enjoyed having no food to eat, or having no friends or no shoulders to lean on, to cry on, you know but at least I realized that it does not really take that much of food to survive, to function, at least as a dude, as a man. You can, at least in my case, I can pretty much survive and function fairly well with just 2 meals or 1.5 meals per day, sometimes just one meal. And and while I am not doing much work, I can pretty much get by with just one serving of instant ramen, instant noodles, just some biscuits, some some bread, some slices, some loaves of bread, and of course H2O and coffee. Yeah, if I do need to do some work to get some shite done, and in that case, I will very much need coffee, especially Japanese, Japanese pure coffee. Yeah. So yeah, what else? Yes, I did. Several days, or at least a couple of days ago, I did. Kind of. I did kind of. Have a fairly pleasant. Dream, or at least that such a dream. Did not cause that much of a discomfort or a distress. And yes, in terms of that, I kind of did enjoy that dream, since I during that dream, I kind of how should I pretty much role played in a simulation, in a first person perspective, as Doctor and President Sun Yat Sen, and I um you know that sort of thing. I And in that dream, I met with one of my teenage crushes, and saw her stabbed or killed her dad, for love, with his just to be with her lover, and the dream, that dream pretty much pretty much matches you know the live a summarized version of how President Sun Yat-sen, one of the one of the most one of the greatest and most epic Chinese revolutionaries, who overthrew Qing dynasty, and established the first re established the Republic of China, and which is the very first republic state throughout the whole Asia, So yeah, and yes, and I did, see a lot. I wouldn't say a lot of gore or blood, but yes, there